Right, so now in the second part, we're going to briefly talk about testing. Just a kind of a summary outline. Um, so in testing, which is used in subud a lot to arrange affairs and so forth, of course, if your intention is sincere, and even though you don't know how to do it and stuff like that, it's kind of like a child. I mean, God is like your father, and you don't really know quite how to do it, maybe, but he makes it right. Oh, yeah. That's very good, very good. Well, however, of course, you can consider that sometimes maybe the intentions weren't so noble and so forth and so on for various reasons. Anyway, so the intention, but in terms of the technique of testing is a thing where you ask a question. Now we're going to go beyond the words of the form. We're going to say, what is the content? What is the content of that question? So the content will depend on the source. So the source, when you're asking God a question, needs to come from where? Well, if you're going to ask God a question, the question that you ask, source to source, needs to come from God. God asks the question, God gives the answer. Hopefully you can understand that simple thing. Source to source. We'll talk about it a little bit more. Anyway, so now we're going to ask your question. Well, how do you ask a question so that it comes from God? So, well, of course, you would have to wait until you were moved by God. So you would be asking a question from your inner feeling. You would be directing your attention there. And you would wait until you were moved. You would also be open-minded, because perhaps the question that you had, am I a good boy, say, or some, thing, which you're not advised to use testing for silly things, because it uses inner energy and strength. It can use up your strength, asking a lot of silly questions. So, so you want to know the answer to this question. So then you wait, and so then you wait until the question comes to you. Why am I testing? That's your question. Because you don't know any better. So that's a complete test right there. But I never answered the question, am I a good boy? But I mean, you can surmise from the testing that, well, you're an ignorant person. And so God can just tell you that you don't know what you're doing in a kind of a nice way. Say, oh yeah, so the testing, and then even before that, you can see, like, can I ask a question moved by God? So, like, if I'm going to ask a question moved by God, so they can just wait and, how old is and that's my question. So it comes out in English. But suppose that I can't receive in my own language, then what would if I haven't learned my alphabet, which I'll get into in a minute. So what question would I ask? I would speak in some other tongue or something would come out. But because I know I receive in my own language, then I can ask, what is the name of Allah? Who? Huh? Well, there's a lot to unpackage there because, so if you can't speak in your own language, then why would you not be able to speak in your own language? Well, because you didn't learn your alphabet. Because in order to say to receive from your inner the word, alphabetical, you have to have learned to say your A's, alphabetical. If you didn't have learned, you haven't practiced saying your A's, then you're going to say, you're not going to make any sense. So you have to learn each letter. A, B, boy, C, crime, D, demon, E, enough, inner thing. Okay, so now let's come back to the subud condition. The subud condition as of the time that subud died after exposing the West to subud from 1957 to 1987. That's 30 years. 30 years he observed toward the end. You still are unable to receive in your own language. So we can surmise from that they had never learned their alphabet. Why did they not learn their alphabet when they were doing the exercise? When it was coming to them, why weren't they doing it? Because they weren't paying attention and they didn't have the courage. Why do I say that? Because if you're not paying attention, you don't have the courage, and somebody starts to move with you to say the letter B, then you're going to go like, and you're going to intone that because you're not there. If you have the intention, you're paying attention, you have courage, and it comes up, you see it, B, boy, rat, Ronca, something brave, be real, reach, beneath, Brahman, brother, brilliant. It just keep going on. It takes effort, but you follow it, prompts you. And then later on, you're going to have a sentence. You're going to be receiving in a sentence, be, what is it? I don't know. Obey, be, obey. If you didn't learn your B's, you would come out and you say, oh yeah. Simple things. First you learn to walk and then you learn to talk. In order to learn to talk, you have to learn your alphabet. And that's about as far as subud has progressed on the whole with the general group. And I would say, with a lot of people who aren't even in the general group anymore for 60 years because, it's like, for whatever reason, and we're going to forgive them ahead of time because they don't know what they're doing. But for whatever reason, they don't pay attention and they're not really aware and alert there for when they're doing the exercise. So they're asleep. So when you do an exercise and you're asleep, if you're awake and you're eager, you can't hardly wait till you're moved. It's like, you're doing that. But if you're as soon as it comes, you go, oh, there you off you go. But if you're kind of, trying to get a free pass, or you kind of lapsed into some sort of somnolence, some kind of thing, where you're, I don't know what you're doing, and it starts coming in. We are. Completely different. then, 20 years from now, you can still be going, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, you're not getting it anymore because you're not paying attention. If your parent talks to you and they're trying to say something to you, then you need to pay attention. Otherwise, you won't hear it. Jimmy, where were you this afternoon? Jimmy's saying, well, I went to the blah blah, I did so and so and so on. If Jimmy's not paying attention. What was that? What did you want? So, and then the parent, after a while of doing this, they go like, just, okay, let's not deal with this right now. We'll deal with something else that works. So that's what we said. If you pay attention to God, we will pay attention to Him. So coming back to testing. So, testing is the way that people tend to get their direction. And it's no good. It's not a good way to go. First of all, because the ones who came in first is kind of a motley crew of good and bad and indifferent and people who happen to be first. They were first in line. They got there first. So they. So the point is this: we can't test. They're not doing the exercise. They're not, as the Prophet said, they're not full-hearted and heedful. They're not paying attention. They're not full-hearted. You're going to receive a gift from the same gift that the prophets got. The gift that Subi said has heaven in it, has everything in it. Aren't you going to be standing in alert? Aren't you going to be ready? Aren't you going to be yes, whatever it is, I'm ready, I want this, I will take it on. Or are you going to be asking, I'm not sure what this is. Perhaps you should wait and see what the other people do. I may try it myself, I'm not sure. Nobody seems to notice what I do or not, so it doesn't really matter. I'll just observe, I think. So I'll do nothing. Let them do this, whatever it is. There's all kind of mischief that people come up with for various reasons. And then also, so Subi had said that it was a good thing to do because it would help to give you proof of the exercise. Because I guess he got so bombarded by people going, well, I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel anything. Or the other Christian, I don't know where it's coming from. Where is it coming from? That he, decided or received, his way was that he said, okay, well, we'll test. And that will give you a proof, so he doesn't have to deal with this. That will give you a proof. So they went testing. And it was all kind of backwards. Because in Indonesia, when things had been more calm and quiet, Subi had never, as I've heard, this is what I've heard, if you know something different, write me a note. But I heard that there was no testing. They didn't have testing. Mappa could never introduce the notion of it, and it didn't come up in the exercise. In the worship. But, he understood it and came to him, but he only told one other person, Dr. Rockman, I believe. His name was something, I think it was Dr. Rockman. He knew about testing. But it wasn't the thing that they did in groups when they didn't do testing. Then when he came to the West, all that noise and pressure. I said, well, use a testing verb. Somehow or another got introduced, and once that cat was let out of the bag, it has been the source of untold mischief, and some good things as well. I mean, testing can be very enlightening if it's approached in moderation, and for a good solid reason, and done properly. It can be really knock your socks off. But because the older people, the people who came in first, they were the ones supposed to be looking after everybody else, so by default, say we're going to test, these new people, what do they know? The people who've been in the longest, they know the most, so they would probably be the better ones to test. A fallacious line of reasoning for sure, but that's, it's normal enough to have a line of reasoning like that. So they would do the testing. Alright, so after introducing it, after a while, then so we said, well, actually, you shouldn't really be testing all the time, brothers and sisters. You should use testing for spiritual things and not for material things. And because testing, he said, would cause you to, it comes about because of a lack of faith. And he went further and he said, if you test all the time, then it will weaken your heart and mind. And of course, I'm sure there was more. We could say that it would affect I would say it would affect your character, because if you become a person that the only thing that you do is decide whether you want to test about something or not, you're not much. Well, I don't know if we should test something. I think we should. Let's test. Should anybody? And then you're busy using your inner strength to figure out, how many ducks you should shoot, and instead of using your heart and mind, I don't think I want to shoot any ducks. That's pretty easy for your heart to come in, or your mind to say, well, it's against the law here. You can't shoot ducks here. Or go ahead and shoot one, but don't shoot too many. Don't just shoot them. You'd be shooting them. Shoot one because you need dinner. If you don't need dinner, don't shoot it. Hunt from necessity, nothing else. You don't hunt for sport. Is that what you call, what kind of a demon are you, or devil are you, that you think it's sport to kill a beautiful living creature like a duck? Has kids and everything else, Psst, come on. Anyway, so that's what happened. And also it looks peculiar to people coming in who aren't aware of the history and the development of subud. So you're going to decide something before you can think to yourself, well, I like to participate in that decision too. That affects me, and I have things to say about it. There are going to be the helpers will now test and receive about the condition of the subud world, and blah blah blah. And so then they start receiving. If it be the will of God, may we please receive for the group. May we please receive and understand why we're eating fish tonight. Whatever it is they're doing, and then it all sounds pretty spiritual. Is it spiritual? It sounds like you might imagine spiritual things to be instructing shalom, blah blah blah. So charade. It's not spiritual. It's not life. Real life, that's spiritual. Subud used to make us laugh. He would crack us up so good and do funny things and say the most wonderful things you never heard before, will never hear again. You never hear it, have never heard it, and just fresh. Brothers and sisters, against the will of God for human beings to use force. Only God can use force. Just out of the blue. Boom. Oh, you go, it changes everything. Stop using force in your in your life. It makes a huge difference. And then you also realize the truth of what he said, that force, God forces you quite a bit. But it's so subtle and it's so gentle and it's so well done that you don't object to it. Oh, I got stopped. But you don't mind. Because it was God's stuff, you can feel it. It's like, oh, and you can't, and it's absolute. Absolute. You can't move. You can't do nothing. So, the point of all of this is that Subud got off to a pretty rocky start, and all this kind of mischief I'm talking about just continued to take place throughout the many years. And of course, the people who were less than noble and didn't really have that much integrity and character, I suppose they want their friend Jack or somebody to be the chairman of the group. They could manipulate the testing. How would it be for Jack to be the chairman? Excellent, wonderful. Why could they do that? Because actually if they looked at it, if they understood about content, the question is, can I deceive the people? And the answer is, don't do that. But it comes up in line of what they were saying. Jack good? Oh yes, Jack would be wonderful. It's a symphony of lower forces speaking through the human being. And the reality of the thing, I'm going to check about Jack right now. Jack's not even in the picture. So then, of course, they can influence the group, and then, of course, it does other things as well. Having the odd group, these misfits, trying to lead the group. And of course, a lot of them, sincere enough to think, well, I don't really like to do this, I don't really feel suited for it, but, God has asked me, because if you say, William Buffett wants you to do this, Buffett was, in their view, and, with some, he was receiving from God. So it was like it was God telling you must do this. You go, oh my God. So you get frightened. Or you feel duty bound. And so, regardless of the fact that you're, a selfish prick. Just kidding. Regardless of whatever you might actually be in your social development, you struggle to take it on. And then this goes with things like that. They're often complaining, well, I don't really like this. It's so hard. It's very difficult to do this work. We don't like this work. This work is hard. And then carry on. A mess. A real mess. Off of just little things, little issues. So they can't really test. That's why I said they couldn't really test, because they can't receive in their own language, and they don't. And a lot of times they don't wait till they're moved from within. They just make up something. May we please receive? They're just making it up, trying to sound spiritual when they do it. As they'll say, may I go outside? May I go outside? Can I go outside? Okay. You're asking people. Not coming from God. When I test a question from God, it's going to be more like, don't test. And that's what he said too. He said, don't test, because it'll affect you, be weak. And then, you know, you'll be testing about everything. It's a complete misuse of the power of God working on you. So this is what you have. This is what has happened over the many years. They go to the conference, instead of having a kind of a healthy, hearty conversation where people are being guided by God, or they go testing. But the members, not so much, because the poor dumb members who came in, they weren't the first ones, so therefore they're kind of inexperienced. Because somebody else did 3 more Lottie heads than they did, or maybe even a year. So what? They stay out of it. And then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because somebody goes, oh, I don't know, I'm having this experience, everything else. Could you help me understand it? And the member, now he's become a complicit in this farce, says, well, you know, I couldn't really tell you. You should talk to one of the helpers about this. As if the helpers are supposed to be, ooh, you know, probably some of the most retarded people you'll ever meet, but, you know, I mean, just really obtuse about some things, and a bunch of other things too. Couldn't test their way out of a wet paper bag, you might say. Anywho, so you have these, you know, people running subud. Naturally, after a while, they just run it into the ground. They had to have the young people take over after about 20 years, because the older people were getting old. I mean, getting old, and it wasn't appropriate for them to run it anymore. The young people needed fresh energy, and the old people stopped it. The helpers, that group, they stopped it. No, we received no, not at this time. No, no, no. What was the real answer? Sure, go ahead. Go ahead and do it. You need to do it. Talking to the kids. Then, you know, once people get, I'm not going to go there. So that's something about testing. And I'm doing this whole thing about testing because I want you to have I want to remind you and make you think about what, you know, what testing is and the ramifications of it. This is just kind of a very brief touch on testing, but, you know, kind of, I think, covers most of us, so I can get back to part 3, which is going to be, you know, more about subud and what happened with subud. So we can talk about why other people didn't come in and why people left, why it didn't grow. Okay, well, I hope you're having a good day, and I look forward to talking to you in part 3. And, you know, God bless. Love ya.